The maid was hired to care for the Duke's fiancée and ended up sleeping in his arms. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. Rain still clung to Eliza's cloak when the carriage stopped before the gates of Blackthorn Hall. The sky was heavy and grey, swallowing the hills of Yorkshire in a wet fog. She pressed her hands together, staring up at the vast house that rose like a fortress out of the mist. She had never seen anything so large or so silent. "Here you are, miss," the driver said. "The Duke's housekeeper will be expecting you." Eliza stepped down carefully, her boots sinking into the gravel. The gate creaked open as if warning her to turn back. But she had nowhere else to go. A thin woman in black waited at the door. "You must be the new maid," she said without warmth. "Mrs. Harker, follow me. Don't wander. Don't speak unless spoken to." Eliza nodded quickly. Inside, the corridors smelled of stone and wax. Portraits watched her from the walls, stern men, pale women. Her footsteps echoed. Mrs. Harker led her to a narrow room near the servants' wing. "You'll care for Lady Catherine Harland, the Duke's fiancée. She is delicate, easily unsettled. You'll keep her company and make sure she takes her medicine. That's all." "Yes, ma'am," Eliza whispered. "She's had difficulties with her previous attendants. See that you last longer than they did." When the door closed, Eliza sat on the small cot and breathed out. She had been in service since she was 13, but nothing felt like this. The house seemed to breathe, as if holding its secrets behind every locked door. Moments later, a young maid appeared. "I'm Clara. Mrs. Harker sent me to fetch you. Lady Catherine wants tea in the conservatory." Eliza followed her through endless corridors until light poured through tall windows. The conservatory glowed with pale green glass. Among the ferns sat a young woman in white, her hands trembling over a cup. "So, you're the new one," Lady Catherine said softly. Her voice was fragile, like something about to break. "What is your name?" "Eliza, my lady." Catherine studied her. "You're very quiet. I like that. The last girl talked too much." She smiled faintly, though her eyes didn't. "Do you know who I am to marry?" "Yes, my lady. His Grace, the Duke of Westmore." "Alexander," Catherine murmured. "Such a proper man, so full of duty. You'll see him soon, I'm sure." She looked away, her tone suddenly sharp. "When you do, remember your place." Eliza lowered her eyes. "Of course, my lady." Later, as the afternoon faded, Eliza carried a tray through the great hall. She paused before the fireplace where a tall man stood, hands clasped behind his back. He turned, and for a moment she forgot to breathe. The Duke of Westmore had the kind of presence that made silence stretch. Dark hair, steady eyes, and an expression carved in stone. "You are the new attendant," he said. His voice was calm but carried an edge. "From London." "From Whitby, my lord." He studied her briefly. "And you've come to tend to my fiancée?" "Yes, my lord." "Very well. Lady Catherine's comfort is your only concern. Speak to Mrs. Harker if you need anything. That will be all." She curtsied, but before she could leave, he asked, "Have you been in service long?" 6 years, my lord." "Then you know discretion is valued above all." "Yes, my lord," she said again, though her voice was smaller now. As she turned to go, he stopped her once more. "You have an honest face, Miss Eliza. I hope it remains that way." She didn't look back. The echo of his words followed her up the stairs. By nightfall, the wind had grown wild. Rain lashed against the windows. Eliza tended to Lady Catherine's chamber, lighting candles and folding blankets. Catherine lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. "Does the rain frighten you?" Eliza asked softly. "No," Catherine said. "It keeps the voices away." Eliza hesitated. "Voices, my lady?" Catherine turned her head, eyes bright. "Sometimes I hear my mother calling. She died here, you know, in this very room. I'm sorry. She was a beautiful woman. Everyone adored her, especially the men of this house." Catherine's lips twisted. "Alexander doesn't like to speak of her." Eliza didn't know what to say. She simply sat beside the bed, holding a cup of tea until the lady's eyes closed. Hours later, after Catherine had fallen asleep, Eliza slipped out into the corridor. The candles flickered with every gust that crept under the doors. Somewhere below, a clock struck 11. As she reached the stairwell, she thought she heard crying. A woman's sobs, distant, but unmistakable. She followed the sound down the hall to Catherine's door. It was slightly open, swaying in the draught. "My lady?" she whispered. No answer. The crying stopped. Eliza stepped inside. The bed was empty. The curtains swayed, but the window was locked. She turned toward the vanity and froze. The reflection showed not her own face, but a shadow moving behind her. She spun around. Nothing. Only silence. Heart pounding, she backed out of the room and shut the door firmly. The house was utterly still again. When morning came, the sun filtered weakly through the mist. Eliza gathered her apron and headed to the kitchen. Mrs. Harker eyed her with suspicion. "You look pale, girl." "I didn't sleep much," Eliza admitted. "The storm was loud. Storms are common here. You'll grow used to them." Catherine remained in her chamber until noon, restless and irritable. "You look as if you've seen a ghost," she said, when Eliza brought her breakfast. "I thought I heard something in the night, my lady." "Ah." Catherine's expression shifted to a faint smile. "Then perhaps you did." Eliza frowned. "You mean someone was awake?" "Someone always is in this house," Catherine whispered. "Be careful where you listen." That evening, Eliza walked through the main hall again, carrying linens. The Duke appeared at the far end of the corridor, his presence filling the space like thunder. "My fiancée has taken her medicine?" he asked. "Yes, my lord." "And she slept well?" "I believe so." He gave a brief nod, then seemed about to say more. But a servant called his name from the staircase. When he turned to answer, Eliza slipped past and continued upstairs, unsure why her pulse raced. In her small room near the servants' quarters, she sat by the tiny window watching the mist creep across the lawn. She told herself she mustn't think of him, of his voice, or the way his eyes held a sadness he tried to hide. He was a duke. She was a maid. It was nonsense to imagine anything else. A sudden knock startled her. Clara peeked in. "Lady Catherine says the Duke will dine with her tonight. She wants you to bring a fresh gown." Eliza nodded and hurried down the corridor to the wardrobe room. She selected a pale blue dress and carried it carefully to the ladies' chamber. Catherine was sitting by the mirror, brushing her hair. "He's coming," she said softly. "It's been weeks since we've dined together. You must be pleased, my lady." Catherine met her eyes in the mirror. "Am I? I sometimes wonder if he sees me at all." Eliza folded the gown. "I'm sure he cares for you deeply." Catherine laughed lightly, a sound that carried more sadness than joy. "Men like Alexander don't love, Eliza. They protect. They possess. But love? No. They save that for dreams." Eliza said nothing. She helped her into the gown, adjusted the ribbon at her neck, and stepped back. Catherine's reflection softened. "You remind me of someone," she murmured. "Someone I can't quite name." After they left for dinner, Eliza returned to her room. The storm had returned too, thunder rolling over the moors. She blew out her candle and tried to rest. But near midnight, she heard the crying again. This time it came from the corridor itself. She rose, heart hammering, and opened her door. The hall was empty, except for the faint glimmer of lightning through the windows. She followed the sound down the passage until it faded near the main stairway. Then silence, only the whisper of rain. When she turned back toward her room, a soft light flickered under Catherine's door. She hesitated, then pushed it open. The bed was untouched. The lamp on the table burned low. The window curtains shifted in the breeze, though the window was still locked. She stepped closer, scanning the room. That was when she saw it. On the pillow, beside the untouched sheets, lay an object gleaming in the lamplight, a brooch of gold and enamel carved with a crest, a falcon clutching a rose. She lifted it carefully, her fingers trembling. The back was engraved with 2 letters intertwined, A.W. She had seen that crest before. It was on the Duke's ring. Eliza looked toward the door, her breath caught in her throat. The corridor was empty, the silence deeper than ever. She turned the brooch over once more, its cold metal pressing into her palm. Outside, thunder shook the sky. The candle flickered and went out. When she reached her small room, dripping from the rain that had slipped through the cracked window, she placed the brooch on her pillow. The crest seemed to glow in the dim light. She was certain she had locked her door before leaving. And yet, someone had been there first. Morning came pale and uneasy. Eliza held the brooch in her hand, turning it over and over, wondering who could have left it there. She hid it in the pocket of her apron before heading downstairs. Mrs. Harker was already in the kitchen, directing the servants like a general. "You're late, girl," she said sharply. "I couldn't sleep, ma'am," Eliza replied. Storms don't excuse idleness. Lady Catherine is awake and demanding her tea. Move." Eliza hurried up the stairs, balancing the tray. Catherine sat by the window, her nightgown a cloud of white against the grey light. She didn't turn when Eliza entered. "You were in my room last night," Catherine said quietly. Eliza froze. "Yes, my lady. I thought I heard you calling." Catherine looked at her reflection in the glass, not at Eliza. "Did you find anything?" Eliza hesitated. Only a brooch, my lady, on your pillow." At that, Catherine turned, her face pale but sharp. "Show it to me." Eliza took it from her apron. Catherine stared at it, her hands trembling slightly. "This isn't mine," she said. "It belonged to Alexander's mother." "The Duchess? She wore it the night she died." Eliza's breath caught. "How did she—" "Enough." Catherine's tone was sudden, cutting. "Do not speak of her in this house." Eliza bowed her head. "Forgive me, my lady." Catherine pressed the brooch into Eliza's palm. "Keep it. If he asks, you never saw it. Do you understand?" "But why?" "Because I said so." The conversation ended there. Later that day, Eliza tried to return the brooch discreetly. She passed through the library, a room lined with old books and heavy silence. She opened a drawer in the writing desk, hoping to leave it where it might be found without question. A deep voice stopped her. "What are you doing there?" She turned so quickly the drawer slammed shut. The Duke stood in the doorway, his eyes hard. "My lord, He crossed the room in 2 strides. "That drawer is locked." "It was open, sir. I only meant—" His gaze fell on the brooch still in her hand. "So that's where my mother's pin went." "No, my lord, stealing from my family." His voice was low, sharp as a blade. "I thought you were different." Eliza felt heat rise to her face. "I found it, my lord, in Lady Catherine's room. I came only to return it." He reached out his hand. "Give it to me." She obeyed, though her hands shook. He looked at the brooch for a long moment, his jaw tight. "You expect me to believe that you found this lying about?" "Yes, my lord." His eyes softened only slightly. "You'll forgive me if I find that difficult." Catherine's voice came from the doorway. "It's true." Both turned. She stood there in a pale gown, her cheeks flushed. "I told her to bring it to you. I misplaced it yesterday." "Don't scold her for my mistake." Alexander hesitated. "Catherine, this belonged to—" "I know what it was," she interrupted, "and I know what it means to you. But I did not steal it." He looked between them, uncertainty crossing his face. Finally he sighed. "Very well." He turned to Eliza. "My apologies. I was mistaken." Eliza curtsied. "Of course, my lord." He left without another word. When he was gone, Catherine's smile faded. "He doesn't trust anyone," she murmured. "Not even me." Eliza said quietly. "He seemed only concerned, my lady." Catherine gave a short laugh. "Concern and suspicion often wear the same mask." She looked toward the hall. "You may go now." Eliza returned to her room, shaken. She should have felt relief, but something in the Duke's eyes had stayed with her, something beyond suspicion. Regret, perhaps, or loneliness. That night the house was calm, but Eliza couldn't rest. She replayed every word of that encounter until dawn painted the windows pale. When she went to attend Catherine the next morning, the lady was sitting at her dressing table, pale and trembling. "Are you unwell, my lady?" Catherine looked up with a strange smile. "You are very kind, Eliza. Too kind. I only do my duty." "Yes. And that is why I can trust you." Catherine reached for her hand suddenly. "Promise me you'll stay with me, no matter what anyone says." Eliza blinked. "Of course, my lady." "I don't mean just for today," Catherine said in a low voice. "I mean through whatever comes next. You mustn't leave me." "I won't." Catherine released her hand and leaned back with a sigh. "Good. Then I can rest." Later that day, while tending the fire, Eliza noticed a shadow in the doorway. The Duke stood there again, watching. "She seems calmer with you," he said quietly. "I do what I can, my lord." He nodded. "I was harsh yesterday. It wasn't fair to you." "I understand, sir." His eyes lingered on her. You don't speak like most servants. I was raised in a parish school, she said. The mistress there believed even maids should learn to read. He smiled faintly, the first real smile she had seen from him. A rare belief. For a brief moment, silence stretched between them, not heavy but strange, like a breath held too long. Then footsteps echoed in the corridor, and Mrs. Harker appeared. "My lord, Lady Catherine requests your presence," she said briskly. The smile vanished. "Of course." He turned to go, but before he did, he said softly to Eliza, "You have a steady heart, Miss Eliza. Don't lose it in this house." After he left, Mrs. Harker gave Eliza a sharp look. "You'll keep your eyes on your work and not on his lordship, do you hear?" "Yes, ma'am." But Mrs. Harker didn't leave. "I've seen girls like you before. Pretty faces that forget their station. It never ends well. Remember that." Eliza bit her tongue and nodded. That night, the air in Catherine's room was heavy with the scent of lavender. The lady lay restless, muttering in her sleep. Eliza wiped her forehead and whispered, "It's all right, my lady." Catherine stirred. "He'll leave me," she murmured, just as he left her. "Who, my lady?" But Catherine's eyes were still closed. "Don't let him go to the west wing. Don't let him see her." Eliza froze. "See who?" Catherine's breathing steadied again. She was asleep. Eliza sat there until the candle burned low. The house was silent except for the ticking clock. Then, just before dawn, Catherine suddenly cried out and bolted upright. "Eliza!" "Yes, my lady?" Catherine clutched her arm, shaking. "Don't let them take me, promise me." "No one will, my lady. Please, you're safe." Catherine's eyes darted around the room as if searching for someone unseen. "You don't understand. There are things in this house. Things that watch. Try to rest," Eliza whispered. "I can't. I won't. Not until he tells the truth." "What truth?" But Catherine didn't answer. She turned away, trembling, and soon slipped back into uneasy sleep. When morning came, Eliza went down to fetch breakfast. The servants whispered in corners, their eyes following her. One of the maids murmured, "You'd think she was mistress herself, the way the Duke looks at her." Eliza pretended not to hear. She carried the tray upstairs, heart pounding. At the top of the stairs, she nearly collided with Alexander. He caught the tray before it could fall. "Forgive me," he said. "I didn't mean to startle you." "No harm done, my lord." He held her gaze a moment too long before clearing his throat. "Lady Catherine asked for tea, I suppose?" "Yes, my lord." He hesitated. "Has she been... well?" Eliza chose her words carefully. "She's been troubled, sir, but she tries to be brave." His expression softened. "You see more of her than anyone. Tell me honestly, do you think she's happy?" Eliza wanted to say yes, but the memory of Catherine's wild eyes stopped her. "I think she's lonely," he nodded slowly. "So am I." Before she could answer, footsteps approached. Catherine appeared at the end of the hall, pale and trembling. "Alexander," she said sharply, "what are you doing here?" "I came to see how you fare," he replied evenly. "You have other matters to attend," she said. "Leave me." "Catherine, I said leave." She turned to Eliza, her tone cutting. "And you, don't speak to him unless I say so." Eliza lowered her head. "Yes, my lady." Alexander looked between them, his jaw tightening but said nothing. He walked away. Catherine watched until he disappeared, then shut her door with a trembling hand. Hours passed in silence. Eliza stayed nearby, sewing by the fire. Catherine sat by the window, staring out at the rain. As evening fell, the lady began to weep softly. "He doesn't love me," she said. "He pities me." "That isn't true, my lady." Catherine's voice sharpened. "What do you know of love?" Eliza's throat tightened. "Nothing, my lady." Catherine rose suddenly and crossed the room. "You think I don't see the way he looks at you, the way you blush when he speaks?" "My lady, do you deny it?" Eliza stepped back, frightened by the intensity in her eyes. "I mean no harm. I've done nothing wrong." Catherine's face crumpled. She pressed her hands to her temples and began to cry. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I say such things. You must think me mad." Eliza shook her head. "No, my lady. You're only tired." Catherine's sobs quieted. "You're kind. Too kind. I don't deserve it." She turned toward the window, voice breaking. If only he could love me the way he once loved her. Eliza frowned. Her? But Catherine didn't answer. She sank into a chair, whispering to herself. By midnight, the rain returned, tapping against the windows like restless fingers. Eliza sat in the corner, fighting sleep. Catherine muttered in her dreams again, words tangled and strange. When dawn broke, the light through the curtains was grey and thin. Catherine lay still, breathing softly. Eliza rose quietly to fetch fresh water. At the door, she stopped. Something on the floor caught her eye, a folded piece of paper, sealed with red wax. She bent to pick it up. Her name was written across it in uneven handwriting. Hands shaking, she broke the seal. Inside was a single line, "She knows the truth." Before she could think what it meant, the door burst open, and Mrs. Harker stood there, pale and severe. "Where is Lady Catherine?" Eliza turned, startled. The bed was empty. "Gone," Mrs. Harker hissed. "She's gone." Eliza's mind went blank. "She was here, I swear she was here." "Don't lie to me, girl." "I'm not," Mrs. Harker glared. "The Duke will hear of this." A moment later, the sound of boots echoed down the corridor. Alexander appeared, his face tight with disbelief. "What's happened?" "Your fiancée, my lord," Mrs. Harker said. "She's vanished." Eliza tried to speak, but no words came. The letter trembled in her hand. Alexander saw it. "What's that?" Eliza hesitated, then held it out. He unfolded it slowly, his brow furrowing at the words. "She knows the truth," he read aloud. The room seemed to freeze. No one spoke. The only sound was the wind pressing against the glass. Then Alexander looked at Eliza. "Who wrote this?" I don't know." His expression hardened. "Until I find her, no one leaves this house." Mrs. Harker pointed accusingly. "She was the last to see Lady Catherine." Alexander's eyes met Eliza's. For the first time there was something dark there, not anger exactly, but fear. "Keep her here," he said quietly, "until I decide what to do," and he turned away as the servants closed in around her. They locked Eliza in a small parlour near the servants' wing. The curtains were drawn, and 2 maids stood guard outside the door. She sat on the edge of a wooden chair, her hands clasped tightly together. Every sound from the hall made her heart jump. Hours passed before the door finally opened. The Duke entered, his coat damp from the rain, his expression unreadable. "You've had time to think," he said. "There's nothing to think, my lord," Eliza whispered. "I swear I know nothing of Lady Catherine's disappearance." He studied her face. "Then why was your name on that letter?" "I don't know. I found it on her floor. I would never harm her." He leaned closer. "Do you know where she might have gone?" "No, my lord." His voice softened slightly. "If you're lying, I'll know. But if you speak the truth, then someone in this house wants you blamed." Eliza met his eyes for the first time. "Do you believe me?" He hesitated. "I want to." Then he straightened. "You'll remain here until she's found. For your own safety. My safety. There are things about this house you don't understand." Before she could ask, he turned and left. The door closed behind him with a final thud. When night fell, Clara slipped in quietly with a tray of bread and tea. "You shouldn't be here," Eliza said. "They told me not to speak to you," Clara whispered. "But I had to. Everyone's saying you did something awful." "I didn't, I know. But Mrs. Harker says you bewitched the Duke. That's why he's protecting you." Eliza felt her stomach twist. "That's nonsense." Clara glanced nervously toward the door. "They've been searching the West Wing all evening. The Duke says he found footprints near the old gallery." "The West Wing?" Eliza frowned. "I thought it was sealed." "It is, or it was." Clara lowered her voice. "They say it's haunted by his mother." Eliza shivered. "Go back before they catch you here." When Clara left, the room felt colder. The wind moaned through the cracks in the window, and the candle flickered. Eliza closed her eyes and prayed that Catherine would be found safe. By morning, the house buzzed with whispers. A stable boy had seen a figure in white near the edge of the forest at dawn. The Duke rode out immediately with 2 men, leaving orders that Eliza was not to leave her room. Hours dragged. Rain began again, steady and grey. Then, late in the afternoon, footsteps approached. The door opened, and instead of the Duke, Mrs. Harker entered. She carried a folded handkerchief in her hand. "Found this by the lake," she said coldly. "Recognize it?" Eliza looked. It was embroidered with tiny blue flowers. Catherine's. "Where is she?" Mrs. Harker's eyes narrowed. "The Duke hasn't said. Perhaps you'd like to tell him yourself when he returns. I've done nothing wrong. Girls like you never think they have, always pretending innocence." She stepped closer. "Do you think you can fool him forever? Men like him don't marry servants, they use them. And when they're done, they throw them away." Eliza's cheeks burned. "I don't want his favor." Mrs. Harker gave a cold laugh. "Then you're a greater fool than I thought." She turned and left, slamming the door behind her. Evening came again before the Duke returned. His boots were muddy, his face pale with exhaustion. "They found no trace," he said quietly. Eliza rose. "Is she—" "No body," he interrupted. "No sign of struggle. It's as if she vanished." He sank into a chair, covering his face with one hand. "This house," he muttered. "It devours the women I care for." Eliza took a cautious step forward. "You should rest, my lord." He looked up, eyes red from lack of sleep. "Rest? When my fiancé is gone and my servants spread gossip like poison?" "I'm sorry," she whispered. His anger faded as quickly as it had come. "You've done nothing wrong. Then why keep me locked here?" He exhaled. "Because you're safer here than anywhere else." "From whom?" He didn't answer. Instead, he rose and walked toward the fireplace. "My mother died in this house," he said suddenly. "Did you know that?" Eliza shook her head. "She fell from the west balcony 20 years ago, or so they said." His voice lowered. "I was 10. I never believed it was an accident." She hesitated. "Do you think someone pushed her?" "I think the truth was buried with her." Silence filled the room until the fire crackled. Then Eliza spoke softly. "Lady Catherine told me she heard voices. She said her mother called to her." He turned sharply. "She said that?" "Yes, my lord." His jaw tightened. "She shouldn't have known." "I told no one." "What do you mean?" "The night my mother died, she screamed my name. I was too far away to reach her." Eliza took a breath. "Perhaps Lady Catherine read about it." "No." His tone was absolute. "The report was sealed. Only I knew." The air between them thickened with unspoken questions. Finally he said, "Whatever Catherine believed, she wasn't mad. Someone frightened her. Someone wanted her silence." Eliza's voice trembled. "You think she was taken?" He met her eyes. "I think she discovered something she shouldn't have." He walked toward the door but stopped halfway. "You're free to move about the servants' floor, but you'll speak to no one about this, not even Mrs. Harker." "Yes, my lord." When he was gone, Eliza pressed her hands to her face. The firelight made shadows dance across the walls, forming shapes that seemed almost alive. The next day, the Duke ordered the staff to resume their duties as if nothing had happened. Servants moved through the halls in uneasy silence. The tension was a living thing. Eliza tried to focus on her chores, though every corner of the house seemed to whisper Catherine's name. While dusting the shelves in the library, she noticed the Duke standing at the far end, staring up at a painting covered by a thin layer of dust. She hesitated, then approached. "My lord?" He didn't turn. "Do you know who this is?" The portrait showed a young woman with soft eyes and a smile that felt strangely familiar. "No, my lord. My mother," he said quietly. "Catherine looks just like her." Eliza studied the face again and realized he was right. The same delicate features, the same calm sadness. "She was beautiful," Eliza murmured. "She was," he said, "and she died before she could tell me what truly happened here." Eliza lowered her voice. "Perhaps Lady Catherine went looking for answers." He turned to her sharply. "You think she went to the West Wing?" "I don't know. But she said someone wanted to harm her." He looked away, jaw clenched. "Then we'll find her." For a long moment, neither moved. The air between them felt charged. Then Eliza said softly, "You should rest, my lord." "You haven't slept." He gave a tired smile. "You sound like her." "Like Lady Catherine?" "No, like my mother." He stepped closer, then stopped himself. "Forgive me, I've said too much." Eliza's pulse raced. "You needn't apologize." He nodded once and left. That evening she sat by the small window in her room, staring out at the endless rain. Something about the portrait haunted her, the way the Duchess's eyes seemed alive, almost aware. Around midnight she heard footsteps in the hall. At first she thought it was one of the maids, but the steps were slow and deliberate. She rose and opened her door just a crack. A candle flickered at the far end of the corridor. The light moved, then disappeared around the corner leading to the old staircase. "Hello?" she whispered. No answer. Curiosity pushed her forward. She followed the glow down the narrow stairs and into the lower corridor of the west wing. The air smelled of dust and age. The candlelight flickered ahead, bouncing off stone. When she turned the corner, the flame vanished. Only the echo of her heartbeat remained. She lifted her own candle higher. "Is someone there?" A cold breeze swept past, almost like a sigh. She turned and gasped. The painting of the Duchess hung crooked on the wall beside her. Beneath it, a small door stood slightly open. Eliza knelt, pushing it wider. It led to a narrow passage hidden behind the wall. Before she could enter, a voice came from behind her. "You shouldn't be here." She spun around. The Duke stood in the shadows, his expression unreadable. "My lord, I heard someone," she said quickly. "I thought—" "You heard this house playing tricks," he interrupted. "It does that. There's a passage," she said, "behind the wall." He stepped forward, closing the small door with a firm hand. "Forget it. It leads nowhere worth finding. But what if Lady Catherine—" "Enough." His tone left no room for argument. "Go back to your room." Eliza hesitated. "Yes, my lord." He watched her go until she disappeared up the stairs. Then she heard the sound of the door locking behind her. Back in her room, she lay awake until dawn, wondering what he wasn't telling her. When the morning bell rang, she went about her chores, trying to act normal, but by mid-morning, the Duke sent for her again. He stood by the window of his study, staring out at the mist. "The men searched the forest again," he said without turning. "Nothing." "I'm sorry, my lord." He looked over his shoulder. "Tell me, Miss Eliza, do you believe in fate?" She blinked. "I don't know, sir. I used to think our lives were our own. That duty could shape us, but lately—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "Lately, I wonder if everything was decided long ago." She stepped closer. "You can't think that, can't I? My mother died here. Now Catherine has vanished. And you, a stranger, arrived just before it happens." Eliza froze. "You think I had something to do with it?" He sighed. "No, but I think this house wanted you here." "The house?" He turned fully toward her, his eyes tired but burning. Every stone remembers, every shadow listens. Before she could answer, a knock sounded at the door. Mrs. Harker entered, clutching her apron. "My lord," she said breathlessly. "The men found something by the lake." Alexander's face went white. "What?" "A piece of fabric, torn from a gown." "What color?" "White." He strode past her, grabbing his coat. Eliza followed to the door. "My lord—" "Stay inside," he said without looking back. "Whatever they've found, you won't want to see it." The hours crawled by after he left. Rain beat against the windows, relentless. When he finally returned after dark, his clothes were soaked, his eyes hollow. "She's alive," he said quietly. Eliza's breath caught. "Where?" "She came back on her own." "Thank heaven," Eliza whispered. "Is she hurt?" "She's resting," he said, though something in his voice was strange, half relief, half dread. "What happened to her?" She wouldn't say. He turned away, staring into the fire. "But she asked for you." Eliza's pulse quickened. "For me?" He nodded. "Go to her. She wants to speak with you alone." When Eliza reached Catherine's room, the candles burned low, casting long shadows. Catherine lay against the pillows, her skin pale as the sheets. "My lady," Eliza said softly. "I'm so glad you're safe." Catherine opened her eyes slowly. "Safe," she murmured. "No, Eliza. None of us are safe here." Eliza stepped closer. "What do you mean?" Catherine's lips trembled. "He told me the truth." "Who?" Catherine's gaze drifted toward the window. "Alexander." Eliza's heart pounded. "What truth?" Catherine looked back at her, eyes full of tears. "That you were never meant to come here. You were meant to remember." Eliza frowned. "Remember what?" Catherine reached for her hand and whispered, "That this house already belongs to you." Eliza stood frozen beside Catherine's bed, her pulse loud in her ears. "Belongs to me?" she whispered. "My lady, I don't understand." Catherine smiled faintly, her voice weak but steady. "Of course you don't. Neither did I. Not until he told me. The Duke said your face reminded him of someone he once loved. He didn't mean me. Eliza's stomach twisted. You must be mistaken. His Grace barely knows me. Catherine's hand trembled as she reached for the cup on her nightstand. He knows you better than you think. He said you walk like her, speak like her. He said it frightened him. Eliza took a step back. Like who? My mother, Catherine murmured. The late Duchess of Westmore. The words hung in the air like smoke. Eliza felt the ground tilt beneath her. That can't be. Catherine gave a small laugh that ended in a cough. I thought the same, but the portrait doesn't lie, does it? Go look at it again. You'll see. Before Eliza could answer, the door opened. The Duke entered, his face drawn, his dark coat still damp from the rain. You shouldn't be speaking, he said gently to Catherine. You need rest. Catherine's tone hardened. You should have told her yourself. He looked sharply at Eliza. Told her what? That she is the image of your mother, Catherine said. Or is that another secret you prefer to keep buried? Alexander's jaw tightened. Enough, Catherine. You've been through a great ordeal. Catherine turned her face to the wall. So have you, my lord. You just hide it better. He stood silently for a long moment before motioning to Eliza. A word. Outside. Eliza followed him into the corridor, her hands clasped tightly. My lord, she began, Lady Catherine said things, strange things. He interrupted, his voice quiet but firm. She's ill, Eliza. Her mind is unsettled. Don't trouble yourself with her words. But she said, I know what she said. His tone softened. Do you believe her? I don't know what to believe, Eliza admitted. But the way she spoke, it frightened me. He nodded slowly. You've done nothing wrong. Stay near her, but don't encourage these fancies. Promise me. I promise, my lord. As he turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of something raw in his eyes, a flicker of guilt, perhaps, or fear. Later that day, the household resumed its uneasy routine. Servants moved like ghosts through the halls, whispering about Catherine's disappearance and return. Some claimed she'd gone mad. Others said she'd seen the spirit of the Duchess herself. Eliza kept to her duties, tending to Catherine, who now spoke little and stared for hours out the window. The silence between them felt heavy, full of things neither dared to say. One evening, as Eliza brushed Catherine's hair, the lady spoke suddenly. He watches you when you're not looking. Eliza froze. Who, my lady? Alexander. He tries not to, but he does. Eliza set down the brush. You're mistaken. No, I see it. The way he listens when you speak. The way he forgets himself for a moment. Catherine's reflection met Eliza's in the mirror. You should leave before it's too late. Eliza's voice trembled. Too late for what? For both of you, Catherine said softly. Before Eliza could reply, there was a knock. Mrs. Harker entered with her usual cold efficiency. His Grace wishes to see Miss Eliza in the study. Catherine turned sharply. Why? Mrs. Harker's expression didn't change. He didn't say, my lady. Catherine's fingers tightened on the edge of the vanity. Don't go. Eliza hesitated, but duty won. I'll return shortly, my lady. In the Duke's study, the fire burned low. Papers covered the desk, and maps of the estate were pinned to the wall. Alexander looked up when she entered. You sent for me, my lord? Yes. He gestured toward the chair opposite him. Sit, please. She obeyed, uneasy. I owe you an apology, he said, for doubting you when Catherine vanished. You did what any master would, she replied quietly. You feared for her safety, and for my honor, he added bitterly. That's what men like me are taught to value most. Eliza studied him, surprised by the weariness in his voice. You sound as if it's a burden. It is, he said simply. Every decision weighed against duty, every feeling examined like a sin. She hesitated. Even kindness. Especially kindness. He gave a short laugh. It makes us weak. Eliza shook her head. I don't believe kindness is weakness. He looked at her then, really looked, and something unspoken passed between them. For a moment the storm outside was forgotten. A knock at the door broke the silence. Mrs. Harker appeared again. Forgive me, my lord. A letter just arrived from the magistrate in York. He took it from her, scanning the seal. Leave us. When she was gone, he opened the letter and frowned. They found nothing. No sign anyone left the estate the night Catherine disappeared. Eliza leaned forward. Then she never left. He met her eyes. It would seem not. A sudden gust rattled the windows. Eliza jumped. Alexander moved to steady the candle on the desk, and his hand brushed hers. The contact was brief, but it left a spark in the air. He pulled back quickly. "Forgive me." "There's nothing to forgive," she said, her voice barely audible. He took a deep breath. "You should go, it's late." She rose, but before she reached the door, he said, "Eliza." She turned. "If anything ever happens, if Catherine's moods grow worse, come to me first. Promise me that." "I promise." She left before her courage failed. The next morning, Catherine refused to eat. "He's been with you again," she said when Eliza entered. Eliza sighed. "He wished only to discuss your well-being." "My well-being?" Catherine laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Don't lie to me. I see how you look at him." "I don't... Do you think I'm blind?" Catherine's voice cracked. "You think I don't know what draws a man like him to a girl like you? You're new, untouched by his world. That's all." Eliza stood her ground. "I'm your servant, not your rival." Catherine stared at her for a long moment, then looked away. "You're right. Forgive me. I'm tired." Eliza nodded, though her heart was pounding. By afternoon, the tension in the house grew unbearable. Servants whispered that Catherine had quarrelled with the Duke earlier in the day. No one knew why, but his voice had been heard echoing through the corridors, followed by the sound of a door slamming. Eliza found him in the garden at dusk, standing near the old stone fountain. "My lord," she called softly. He turned, startled. "Eliza, you shouldn't be out here. I was worried. The servant said you were upset." He looked away. "Catherine believes I've betrayed her." "Because of me?" He hesitated, then nodded. "She thinks I—" He stopped himself. "It doesn't matter what she thinks." Eliza stepped closer. "You should speak to her. She loves you." He gave a bitter smile. "She loves the idea of me, the noble Duke who can fix what's broken, but I can't even fix myself." "You're too hard on yourself," she said softly. He looked at her then, eyes searching. "You don't know what I've done." "Then tell me." He shook his head. "Some things are better left buried." Thunder rolled across the moors, and the first drops of rain began to fall. "You should go inside," he said, "before the storm worsens." Eliza hesitated, then turned to leave, but as she reached the terrace, she heard him call her name. "Eliza." She turned back. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for believing I'm not a monster." She didn't answer, only bowed her head and hurried back toward the house. That night, sleep wouldn't come. The storm raged, shaking the shutters. Around midnight, she rose to check on Catherine. The lady was sitting upright in bed, her eyes wide. "My lady," Eliza whispered. "You should rest." Catherine's voice was calm, almost eerie. He went to her room again. Eliza frowned. "Whose room?" "The Duchess's." "There's no such room." "There is," Catherine said, "in the West Wing. He thinks I don't know, but I followed him once." "My lady, please." "You'll see for yourself," Catherine interrupted, "when he calls you there." Eliza tried to soothe her, but Catherine only smiled faintly and lay back down. Within minutes, she was asleep. The next morning, Catherine refused to speak at all. When Eliza asked if she wished for breakfast, she simply shook her head. By noon, the Duke sent for her again. "She's unwell," he said, pacing the study. "The physician thinks she may need to be taken to London." "She doesn't want to leave," Eliza said quietly. "She may have no choice." He stopped, facing her. "I never wanted this. I only wanted to keep my promise to her father." Eliza frowned. "Promise? When her father died, I swore to protect her. Marrying her was the only way to do that. But you don't love her." His silence was answer enough. Before either could speak again, a servant burst in, breathless. "My lord, Lady Catherine, she's missing again." Alexander's face went pale. "What?" "She's not in her room. The maids can't find her anywhere." Eliza's knees went weak. "No." The Duke turned to her. "Where would she go?" "I don't know. She's been frightened. She spoke of voices, of your mother's room." He didn't wait for her to finish. "The West Wing." They ran through the corridors together, the air thick with the scent of rain. Servants followed with lanterns, whispering prayers. When they reached the west wing, the doors groaned as they opened. Dust drifted through the air like mist. "There," Eliza said, pointing toward the old gallery. A faint light glowed at the far end. Alexander rushed forward, calling Catherine's name. No answer. Eliza followed close behind, her heart pounding. Then, through the broken windows, lightning flashed, and in that instant she saw her. Catherine standing at the edge of the lake below, her white gown whipping in the wind. "My lord!" Eliza cried. "There!" Without hesitation, Alexander sprinted down the steps into the storm. Eliza gathered her skirts and ran after him. Rain soaked them both as they reached the shore. Catherine stood motionless, the brooch in her hand, her eyes fixed on the water. "Catherine!" Alexander shouted. "Come back!" She turned slowly, her hair plastered to her face. "You lied to me." "Whatever you think, you said she was nothing," Catherine screamed. "But she's everything you see when you look at me." Eliza stepped forward. "My lady, please, let's go inside. You'll catch your death." Catherine's voice broke. Death would be mercy. Alexander took another step, his hand outstretched. "Please." For a moment, it seemed she might listen. Then she looked at Eliza and whispered, "Ask him about the promise he made to my father. Ask him who it was really meant for." Lightning split the sky. Eliza blinked, and Catherine was gone, swallowed by the storm's darkness. Eliza stumbled through the mud, calling Catherine's name again and again, but the storm drowned her voice. The Duke reached the edge of the lake first, searching frantically in the water. "She's not here," Eliza cried, breathless. "She couldn't have vanished again." Alexander's coat was soaked, his hair plastered to his face. "She didn't drown," he said firmly. "The current is too shallow." "Then where— Look!" He pointed toward the trees. A faint figure moved between the branches, the white of Catherine's gown flashing like a ghost. Without thinking, Eliza ran after her. The mud clung to her boots, branches tore at her sleeves. "My lady!" she shouted. "Please stop!" The figure stumbled, then collapsed. Eliza reached her first. Catherine lay trembling, rain running down her face, her fingers still gripping the golden brooch. "My lady," Eliza whispered, kneeling beside her. "You're safe now." Catherine's eyes fluttered open. "Safe," she said weakly. "No one is safe in this house." Alexander knelt beside them. "Catherine, please, come back inside." She turned her head toward him. "You think you can save me, Alexander. You can't even save yourself." He tried to lift her, but she pulled away. "Don't touch me. Don't pretend to care." Eliza caught her hand gently. "You're ill, my lady. Let us help you." Catherine looked at her, eyes burning with something like pity. "You still don't see, do you? You don't know what he's done." "Enough," Alexander said quietly. "We'll talk inside." He lifted her despite her protests, and they carried her back through the rain. When they reached the castle, Mrs. Harker gasped at the sight. Servants hurried to fetch blankets and hot water. "Take her to her room," Alexander ordered, "and no one else enters unless I give permission." Eliza followed, helping the maids dry Catherine's hair and change her clothes. When the others left, Catherine whispered, "He'll tell you soon. He won't have a choice." Eliza touched her arm. "Tell me what, my lady?" Catherine's voice dropped to a tremor. "About the promise, about you." Before Eliza could ask more, Catherine closed her eyes, too weak to speak. Later that evening, the physician arrived from the village. "Exhaustion," he said after examining her. "A few days of rest and she'll recover." Alexander thanked him and saw him out. When he returned, Eliza was standing by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. "She'll be fine," he said quietly. Eliza nodded. "She said strange things again." His eyes met hers. "What kind of things?" "She spoke of a promise," Eliza said. "One you made to her father. She said it wasn't meant for her." He turned away. "She's delirious." "Is she?" Eliza asked softly. "She seems to know things she shouldn't." He faced her again, anger flickering beneath his calm. "You think I'd lie to her? To you?" "No," Eliza said quickly, "but there are truths that frighten even honest men." He stared at her for a moment, then exhaled. "You have a dangerous mind, Miss Eliza. Or only a curious one." He almost smiled. "Curiosity ruins more souls than sin." Then we are both already ruined, she said before she could stop herself. The words hung between them. He stepped closer. Do you mean that? She looked up at him, rain still dripping from her hair. I mean, I don't fear you, my lord. Not anymore. Something in his expression shifted, softened, then hardened again. He took a step back. You should. Eliza's pulse quickened. Why? Because if you stay, I won't be able to pretend anymore. She didn't understand, or perhaps she did, but couldn't admit it. He turned away, his voice rough. Go back to your room. She left without another word. For 2 days, Catherine slept, and the castle grew strangely quiet. The servants spoke little, moving through the halls like shadows. On the 3rd night, Eliza went to the kitchen to fetch broth. She found Mrs. Harker waiting. You've brought enough trouble to this house, the woman said coldly. I only do my duty, Eliza replied. Your duty is to obey, not to enchant. Eliza frowned. I've done nothing improper. Then why does his lordship look at you as if you were the only soul left on earth? Eliza's face burned. You imagine things. Do I? Mrs. Harker's lips curved into a bitter smile. I saw the same look on his father once. It ended in ruin then too. What are you talking about? The older woman leaned close. You don't belong here, and if you're wise, you'll leave before he destroys you as well. Eliza stared at her, speechless, until Mrs. Harker turned and disappeared into the dark corridor. When Eliza returned to Catherine's room, the lady was awake, sitting upright. You were gone long enough, Catherine said softly. I went for broth. Always serving, Catherine murmured. Always helping. Do you think goodness will save you? Eliza hesitated. It's all I have, Catherine smiled faintly. Then guard it well. The house eats kindness. Eliza set down the tray. You should eat, my lady. Catherine shook her head. He's the one who should be fed. His guilt, his need to atone, they're starving him. My lady, do you love him? Catherine asked suddenly. Eliza froze. No, of course not. Catherine's eyes searched hers. Liar. You do. I see it. I would never... Catherine reached out and grasped her wrist. He'll ruin you if you stay. Before Eliza could reply, the door opened. Alexander stood there, pale and worn. Is she troubling you again? No, my lord, Eliza said quickly. Catherine released her hand. Trouble is all I am to you now, isn't it? Alexander's tone softened. You need rest. That's all. I need truth, Catherine said. But you've never given me that. He said nothing. After a moment he turned to Eliza. Walk with me. Eliza followed him out into the hall. The candles flickered as they walked. Neither spoke until they reached the staircase. She's worse, he said quietly. Every word she says cuts like a knife. She's frightened, Eliza replied. And lonely. So am I, he murmured. The words hung in the air. She looked at him. Then let someone help you. I can't, he said. There are things you don't know. Then tell me, she said. He hesitated, then motioned toward the gallery. Not here. They walked to the library, the fire low and warm. He poured himself a glass of brandy but didn't drink it. When Catherine's father died, he began, he left me his estate in trust. But there was a price. I was to marry his daughter. It was meant to save her from ruin. Eliza frowned. And yet it ruins you both. He gave a sad smile. Perhaps. But it's a debt I owed. To him? To myself, he said, because I failed to save another once. Eliza's voice softened. Your mother? He nodded. She loved a man beneath her station. My father discovered it and... He stopped, jaw tight. He made certain the man vanished. My mother followed soon after. I'm sorry, Eliza whispered. He looked at her, his voice low. Catherine said you belong to this house. Maybe she's right. You understand its pain better than anyone I've known. Eliza's throat tightened. You shouldn't say that, my lord. Why? Because words like that can't be taken back. He took a step toward her. Maybe I don't want to take them back. For a heartbeat, the air between them felt electric. Then he turned abruptly away, setting down the glass. You should go, before I forget who I'm supposed to be. She left, her heart pounding, her thoughts a storm. The next morning, Catherine was sitting by the window again, pale but alert. You were with him last night, she said quietly. Eliza's voice caught. Only for a moment. Catherine's tone softened. He'll destroy himself trying to be good. And you'll destroy yourself trying to believe him. Eliza wanted to argue, but she couldn't. Catherine turned her face toward the window. When the time comes, you'll see the truth for yourself. Later that night, Eliza went to her room exhausted. A letter waited on her pillow, sealed with no name. She opened it slowly. The handwriting was unfamiliar. If you love the Duke, leave this place, before it takes you too. Her hands trembled as she read it again. Someone knew. Someone watched. Before she could think what to do, there was a knock. She hid the letter quickly. "Come in," she called. The Duke stepped inside. "Forgive the hour," he said. "I needed to see you." "My lord." "Not as your master," he interrupted. "As a man," her breath caught. "You shouldn't be here." "I know." He hesitated, then said, "I can't stop thinking about you." She shook her head. "You're engaged." "I gave a promise, yes, but not my heart." "Please, my lord," she whispered. "Don't say these things." He took her hand. "Eliza, tell me you feel nothing and I'll leave this room." She tried to speak, but the words failed. "Tell me," he said again, his voice breaking. Her eyes met his. "I can't." The silence that followed was louder than thunder. He lifted her hand slowly, then dropped it as if burned. "Then God forgive me," he said. Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating the corridor through the open door. And in that instant, both saw the same thing. Catherine standing there, drenched and trembling, watching them in silence. Catherine's voice broke the silence before either of them could move. "So it's true." Eliza stepped back, her face pale. "My lady, don't," Catherine said sharply. Her gown clung to her like a shadow, her hair tangled and wet. "Don't lie to me. I saw everything." Alexander took a step toward her. "Catherine, listen." She laughed, the sound brittle. "Listen. I've listened for months, Alexander, to your silences, to your pity, and now I see what fills them." Eliza tried to speak, but Catherine turned on her. "Do you think I don't know what you are? You came into my house, into my life, pretending kindness, pretending loyalty." "I never pretended," Eliza said softly. "I've only tried to care for you." "Care?" Catherine's eyes gleamed. "You've stolen everything that was mine." Alexander's voice cut through the air. "Enough!" She looked at him, trembling. "You defend her in my presence? She's done nothing wrong." Catherine stared at him for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "Not yet, but she will." Before he could reply, she turned and left the room, her steps echoing down the corridor. Eliza sank into the nearest chair, shaking. "My lord, I swear—" "I know," Alexander said quietly. "This isn't your fault. She hates me now. She hates the truth," he said. "And the truth frightens her." Eliza lifted her eyes to his. "Then tell me the truth, my lord, all of it." He hesitated. The firelight flickered over his face, revealing the weariness etched there. "If I tell you, you'll wish you'd never come to Blackthorn." "Tell me anyway." He drew a deep breath. "Before Catherine's father died, he made me promise to protect both his daughters." "Both?" Eliza's voice faltered. "He had only one." Alexander looked at her, and something in his eyes made her stomach drop. "No," he said quietly. "He had two." She stared at him, unable to speak. "One legitimate," he continued, "and one born of a servant girl who died before anyone knew the truth. The child was sent away. No name, no inheritance. But her father never forgot." Eliza's pulse pounded. "You mean—" "Yes," he said. "You." She stepped back, shaking her head. "No, that's not possible." "I didn't believe it either at first," he said. "But when you arrived, I saw her face. The Duchess's face. In yours. The same eyes, the same quiet strength. I found the record myself. The servant's name was Mary Holloway." Eliza's vision blurred. "My mother's name was Mary Holloway. I'm sorry," he said softly. "I should have told you sooner, but I wanted to be sure." Eliza's hands trembled. "So I'm Catherine's sister?" "Yes." The word struck her like a blow. She turned away, gripping the edge of the table. "She can never know." "She already does," Alexander said. "That's why she hates you." Eliza's knees went weak. "Then she'll never forgive me." "Perhaps not," he said, "but she deserves to know I never meant to deceive her. And so do you." Eliza's eyes filled with tears. "Everything makes sense now. the way the house felt familiar, the way people stared. He took a cautious step forward. "Eliza, none of this changes what's in my heart." She shook her head. "It changes everything. You made a promise to her father to protect me. That's all this is." "No," he said fiercely. "What I feel for you isn't duty. It's the first thing in my life that feels true." She met his gaze, torn between fear and longing. "And Catherine?" "I'll end the engagement," he said. "It's a lie built on pain. I won't live that way anymore." "You can't," she whispered. "It would destroy her." "It's already destroying her," he said quietly. Before she could answer, a knock came at the door. Mrs. Harker entered, her expression grave. "My lord, Lady Catherine is gone." Alexander stiffened. "Gone? Again?" "She left a note on her dressing table. She's taken a carriage to London." He snatched the note from Mrs. Harker's hand and read quickly. His face darkened. "She's gone to her uncle. She intends to break the engagement publicly." Eliza's breath caught. "Then it's over." Alexander looked at her, his voice low. "Not until she's safe. I'll ride after her in the morning." Mrs. Harker frowned. "And the girl?" "Eliza stays here," he said firmly. "She's under my protection." Mrs. Harker's eyes narrowed. "Protection, my lord, or something else?" "That will be all, Mrs. Harker." The woman hesitated, then left, muttering under her breath. When they were alone, Alexander looked at Eliza again. "I'll find her and bring her home. Then I'll tell the world the truth. You deserve your name, your place." Eliza shook her head. "I don't want a name, my lord. I want peace." "You'll have both," he said. That night, Eliza couldn't sleep. Every creak of the old house made her flinch. When she finally rose, she found herself walking the corridors without knowing why. The storm had passed, but the air still felt heavy. At the end of the hall, she stopped before the locked door of the west wing. Something compelled her to try the handle. To her surprise, it opened. The corridor beyond was covered in dust. She stepped inside, her candle flickering. Paintings lined the walls, ancestors long gone, faces stern and watchful. At the far end stood the portrait of the Duchess. Eliza stared at it, her heart pounding. The woman's eyes seemed almost alive, filled with a sorrow Eliza finally understood. "You were my grandmother," she whispered, "and I never knew." Behind her, the floor creaked. She turned quickly. Mrs. Harker stood in the shadows, her face pale. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Eliza steadied her voice. "You knew, didn't you?" The housekeeper's lips pressed tight. "I served the old Duchess. I know what her husband did to that poor girl. I tried to forget, but when you arrived I saw her ghost in your eyes. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because nothing good comes from digging up the dead," Mrs. Harker said. "And now you've dragged it all back." Eliza took a step closer. "You think I wanted this?" Mrs. Harker's voice softened. "Leave while you still can. The Duke means well, but men like him are bound by their guilt. He'll destroy you without meaning to." Eliza stared at her. "You think I should just vanish?" "I think you should live," the woman said quietly and turned away. Eliza was left alone with the flickering candle and the portrait's silent gaze. The next morning, Alexander left before dawn. The sound of hooves faded into the mist. Eliza stood by the window, watching until he disappeared beyond the hills. The house felt emptier than ever. The servants avoided her eyes, whispering whenever she passed. She spent the day tending to small tasks, anything to keep her hands busy. That evening, as she prepared for bed, a knock came at her door. It was Clara, her face pale. "Miss, there's someone downstairs asking for you." "For me?" Clara nodded. "A messenger. Says he came from London." Eliza hurried down to the main hall, where a young man stood dripping rain onto the floor. He handed her a folded letter. "From His Grace," he said. "He asked that it be given only to you." Eliza broke the seal. "I found Catherine. She's safe with her uncle, but the truth is spreading faster than I expected. I will remain in London a few days to settle matters. Do not leave the house. Trust no one but Harker. I will return soon." Her hands trembled as she read it again. "Did he say anything else?" she asked the messenger. The man hesitated. "Only that he was being followed when he sent me." "Followed?" The messenger nodded, uneasy. "Said not to worry, but he looked troubled." Eliza's stomach tightened. "Thank you. You'd better go before the roads flood again." When he left, she stood in the silent hall, the letter crumpled in her hand. That night, she dreamed of the lake, of Catherine standing on the shore, holding the brooch and whispering her name. She woke with a start. Moonlight filtered through the curtains. Somewhere in the distance, a clock struck 3. A sound came from the corridor, a door opening. Soft footsteps. She rose quietly, wrapping her shawl around her shoulders, and stepped into the hall. At the far end, a figure moved in the darkness, a woman's shape, pale and still. "Catherine?" Eliza whispered. The figure turned slowly. It wasn't Catherine. The candlelight caught her face, familiar and yet impossible. The same features that hung in the portrait of the Duchess, the same eyes that watched her every night from the gallery. Eliza couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The figure raised a hand pointing toward the west wing. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished into the shadows. Eliza clutched the wall for balance, heart pounding. She didn't know if she'd seen a ghost or her own reflection, but as she turned back toward her room, she saw something lying on the floor beneath her door, a folded letter sealed with black wax. She picked it up, her fingers trembling. The seal bore the crest of the Duke. Inside, in the same handwriting as before, were 6 words: "If you love him, leave tonight." Eliza stared at the letter, her pulse hammering. The wax seal gleamed in the candlelight, the Duke's crest unmistakable. But the handwriting, though careful, didn't look quite right. The lines were too sharp, the loops too heavy. She folded it quickly, hiding it in her apron as footsteps echoed in the hall. Clara appeared, rubbing her eyes. "Miss, are you all right?" "Yes," Eliza said quickly. "Go back to bed. You're shaking. It's just the cold." Clara hesitated. "Mrs. Harker says strange things have been happening since His Grace left. Doors opening on their own, voices in the west wing." Eliza forced a smile. "Superstitions. Go now." When the girl was gone, Eliza pressed a hand to her chest. "If you love him, leave tonight." The words rang in her mind like a warning bell. She lit another candle and went to the library. The fire was out, but she didn't care. She needed to think. Who would want her gone? Mrs. Harker? Catherine's uncle? Or Alexander himself? A sudden gust rattled the window, making her jump. When she turned, she saw movement near the far shelf, a shadow slipping between the bookcases. "Who's there?" she called. No answer. She took a step forward. Her candle flickered and went out. "Eliza!" The voice was a whisper, barely a breath. She froze. Who said that? "Eliza!" The sound came from behind her this time. She spun around and saw a figure standing near the fireplace, faint and pale as smoke. It was the Duchess. Her face was calm, her hands clasped before her, the same as in the portrait. But her eyes, those eyes were filled with grief so deep it silenced the room. Eliza could only whisper, "What do you want from me?" The ghost raised one trembling hand and pointed toward the door. Then she vanished. Eliza stumbled back, clutching the table for balance. The room was empty again. Only the whisper of wind remained. At dawn, she went to Mrs. Harker. The housekeeper looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. "You're awake early," Mrs. Harker said. "I couldn't sleep," Eliza replied. "Someone left a letter at my door. It bore the Duke's seal." Mrs. Harker frowned. "May I see it?" "I destroyed it," Eliza lied. "That was wise," the woman said. "No good comes from letters in this house." Eliza studied her face. "You don't seem surprised." "I've seen enough tricks in my years here to fill a dozen coffins," Mrs. Harker said. "Ghosts, secrets, blackmail, it's all the same. You'd do best to forget." Eliza hesitated. "What did you mean before? That the Duke is bound by guilt?" Mrs. Harker's mouth tightened. "He carries more than his own sins. He carries his father's, that's all I'll say." Before Eliza could press her further, a knock sounded at the door. Clara ran in, breathless. "A carriage, Mrs. Harker. A man's just arrived." Eliza's heart leapt. "The Duke?" "No, miss. Someone else. He says he's from London." They hurried to the main hall. A tall man stood dripping rain onto the floor, his coat travel-stained. He bowed slightly. "I beg your pardon. I'm Dr. Hollis, Lady Catherine's physician." Eliza blinked. "Catherine's?" "Yes. I was sent by her uncle to ensure her health. Is she here?" Mrs. Harker's face hardened. "Lady Catherine left for London 2 days ago." The doctor frowned. Impossible. She never arrived. The silence that followed was suffocating. Eliza's voice trembled. Are you certain? I arrived at her uncle's townhouse yesterday. They expected her, but no carriage came. Mrs. Harker crossed herself. Then she's gone again. The doctor turned to Eliza. His Grace wrote to me before I left. He said you were the one who cared for her best. Did she say anything before she departed? Eliza nodded slowly, only that she meant to set things right. The doctor's expression darkened. Then I fear she's in danger. There are men in London who would use her name and her secrets for profit. What secrets? Eliza asked. He hesitated. That's for the Duke to tell, not me. Where is he? In London, Eliza said faintly. Then someone must warn him. Before anyone could answer, the door blew open with a gust of cold wind. A servant stumbled in, holding a scrap of cloth. Found this near the road, ma'am, he said, panting. It's from the Duke's carriage. Mrs. Harker grabbed it. The cloth was torn and stained with mud. The doctor frowned. Was there an accident? No, the servant said, but there were tracks. 2 horses, not one. Looked like someone followed him. Eliza's hands went cold. Followed? The doctor's face grew grim. Then His Grace may not have reached London either. They spent the rest of the morning sending messengers in every direction. By afternoon, one returned with news. The Duke's coach had been found abandoned near the old stone bridge. No sign of driver or horses. Eliza refused to sit still. She rode with the search party despite Mrs. Harker's protests. The road was slick with mud, the sky heavy and grey. When they reached the bridge, the men spread out, calling Alexander's name. Eliza stood at the edge, staring into the water below. It moved slow and dark beneath the arches. Miss, one of the men called. Over here. She ran to where he stood, pointing to a patch of grass. There, half buried in the mud, lay a ring, the Duke's ring, marked with the crest of Westmore. Eliza picked it up, her breath catching. The metal was cold as ice. The doctor came to her side. It doesn't mean he's gone, he said quickly. He could have dropped it. But Eliza barely heard him. We have to keep searching. They searched until dusk, but there was nothing. No carriage, no horses, no trace of the Duke. Only the ring. When they returned to the castle, Mrs. Harker met them at the door. Anything, Eliza shook her head. Then we pray, Mrs. Harker said quietly. That night, the castle felt like a tomb. The servants whispered in corners, eyes darting toward the windows, as thunder rolled in the distance. Eliza sat in the library, the ring on the table before her. Clara brought her tea, but didn't speak. Hours passed. At last, Eliza rose and went to the portrait gallery. The Duchess's eyes seemed to follow her as she moved through the shadows. You wanted me to leave, Eliza whispered. Was this why? To spare me from losing him? The candle flickered. For a moment, she thought she saw the faint outline of a figure behind her, the shimmer of white silk. She turned, but the hall was empty. She returned to her room and found another letter on the floor, the same black wax seal. Her hands shook as she opened it. This time, only one line. He is alive, but not free. Eliza's heart leapt. She ran to Mrs. Harker's room and pounded on the door. The woman opened it in her nightclothes, frowning. What in heaven's name? Someone knows where he is, Eliza cried, holding out the note. Mrs. Harker took it, reading quickly. Where did this come from? It was under my door. The older woman's face darkened. Then someone's in the house. They searched the corridors together, candles in hand, but found nothing. No footprints, no open doors. Only silence. When dawn came, Mrs. Harker called the doctor to the study. We must send word to the magistrate, she said. This is beyond us now. But Eliza wasn't listening. She was staring at the fireplace. Above the mantel hung a map of the estate, yellowed and torn. Near the bottom corner, faint letters marked a place she'd never noticed before. Holloway Crypt. Her mother's name. Eliza touched the map. What is this? Mrs. Harker turned. An old family tomb, long sealed. Where is it? In the woods beyond the lake. Why? Eliza didn't answer. She already knew. As soon as the others were occupied, she slipped out, wrapping her cloak tight. The path to the lake was slick with fog. She followed it until the trees opened onto a clearing. There, half hidden by ivy, stood the entrance to the crypt, a stone door marked with the crest of Westmore. Her candlelight flickered over the carvings. The air was cold, heavy with the scent of earth. She pushed the door. It groaned but gave way. Inside, narrow steps led down into darkness. "Eliza." The voice made her freeze. She turned and saw Alexander standing at the bottom of the steps, pale and disheveled, his shirt torn, his face shadowed. "My lord," she gasped. "You're alive," he smiled faintly. "Barely." She ran down to him. "What happened? Where have you been?" "They tried to stop me," he said. "Catherine's uncle. He knows the truth about you. He wanted me to keep it buried." Eliza touched his arm. "You're hurt." "It's nothing." He looked around the crypt. "This place, I thought it was gone." "You were brought here?" He nodded. "They left me to die, thinking no one would find me. But I escaped." "Then we must go," she said. "You're not safe." "Neither are you," he replied. "If they learn I'm alive, they'll come for both of us." "We can leave tonight," she said. "Start over." He took her hand. "Would you?" "Yes." He smiled again, tired but sincere. Then it settled. Before she could speak, a sound echoed from above, footsteps on the stone stairs. Alexander pulled her close. "Someone followed you." A figure appeared in the doorway, holding a lantern high. The light caught her face. It was Catherine. Her eyes were wild, her voice calm. "I told you the truth would find you both." The lantern's light flickered against the stone walls as Catherine descended the steps, her pale face half hidden beneath her hood. Rain dripped from the hem of her cloak, each drop echoing like a heartbeat. "Catherine," Alexander said carefully, stepping forward, "you shouldn't be here." She laughed softly. "Neither should you. I thought you were dead. Imagine my surprise when I saw your horse tethered outside the woods." Eliza moved closer to Alexander, her voice trembling. "My lady, please, you're unwell. Let us help you." "Help me?" Catherine's smile faltered. "I think I'm the only one who sees things clearly. You both wear masks and call it honesty." Alexander's tone hardened. "Whatever you believe, this ends tonight. No more secrets, no more lies." Catherine held the lantern higher, the light throwing wild shadows on the crypt's walls. "Lies? You mean the lie of our engagement? Or the lie you built around her?" She pointed at Eliza. "Your lost little orphan who turned out to be my sister." Eliza froze. "You knew?" "I knew the night you arrived," Catherine said. "I knew the moment I saw your face. You have my mother's eyes, the same as mine. And yet he couldn't look at me the same way again." "That's not true," Alexander said sharply. "It is," she hissed. "You pitied me, but you loved her." Eliza stepped forward. "My lady, please." "Don't call me that," Catherine snapped. "You have everything I ever wanted, his love, his loyalty, even his guilt. And you didn't have to fight for any of it." Alexander's voice was calm but firm. "Catherine, I broke the promise your father forced upon me. I won't pretend anymore. I'll live by truth, not obligation." Catherine's expression cracked. "And what of me? What am I to do with the ruin you leave behind?" "You're free," he said. "Free to begin again." She shook her head slowly. "You call it freedom. I call it exile." Eliza took a tentative step toward her. "You don't have to leave. We can make peace with this." Catherine laughed again, bitter and thin. "Peace? Do you think I could ever walk the same halls, knowing the woman he truly loves shares my blood?" The lantern flame wavered. Catherine's eyes softened for a fleeting moment as she looked at Eliza. "You were never my enemy. I tried to hate you. But how can you hate a mirror?" "I don't want your life," Eliza said quietly. "Or your title. I only want peace for all of us." "You think love brings peace," Catherine whispered. "It brings only chains." Alexander stepped between them. "Catherine, listen to me. What happened between our parents poisoned this house. Don't let it poison us too." Her gaze flicked to the floor, where the ring he had dropped earlier gleamed faintly. "You think you can erase the past? You can't. It lives in these walls." The rain outside grew heavier, pounding against the stone roof. Catherine lowered the lantern until the flame cast long shadows on their faces. "I came here tonight to tell you I've done something neither of you can undo." Alexander's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "I went to London," she said quietly. "I spoke to my uncle. The papers have been signed. The engagement is dissolved. By morning everyone will know." Eliza's breath caught. "Then it's over." Not quite, Catherine said. I also gave him something else, a letter with your confession, Alexander. The truth about Eliza's parentage. By now it's already on its way to the magistrate. Alexander went pale. You didn't. I did. You wanted truth? Then let the world see it. Eliza stared at her sister. Why would you do that? It will ruin him. Catherine's voice broke. Because I can't bear to watch you build a life on lies. Because I loved him once. And because I can't live in this house another day. She turned toward the stairs, her shoulders trembling. Catherine, wait, Eliza called. But Catherine didn't stop. You'll thank me one day, she said over her shoulder. When the world no longer owns you. Then she was gone, her lantern light vanishing into the rain. Eliza stood frozen until Alexander caught her arm. She's gone too far. That letter, what will happen if it reaches the magistrate? He ran a hand through his hair. They'll strip the estate, question my title, my right to it, and they'll drag your name through every court in Yorkshire. Then we must stop it. He looked at her, startled. You mean, I'll go after her, Eliza said firmly. You're hurt. You can barely stand. I won't let you face her alone. Then we'll go together. He nodded once. We'll need horses. The road to York is long. They climbed out of the crypt and into the storm. By the time they reached the stables, the wind had nearly torn the lantern from Eliza's hand. Alexander saddled 2 horses, his movements quick despite the pain in his shoulder. As they rode through the night, the rain stung their faces, but neither spoke. The road twisted through the moors like a ribbon of shadow. At dawn, they reached the crossroads where the mail coach stopped before heading south. There, Alexander said, pointing. If she posted the letter, it would have been from here. Eliza slid from her horse and ran to the small inn beside the road. Inside, the keeper looked up from his ledger. Morning, miss, what'll it be? Did a lady come through here last night? She asked breathlessly. Tall, fair hair, travelling alone? He frowned, thinking. Aye. Paid for a carriage to York just after midnight. Left this behind. He handed Eliza a small ribbon damp from the rain. Catherine's. Which road did she take? The east road, he said. But if it's the letter you're after, the mail coach passed not an hour ago. Alexander swore under his breath. We'll never catch it. Maybe not, Eliza said, but we can reach York before it's delivered, if we ride through the night. He looked at her, admiration flickering behind his exhaustion. You're braver than I deserve. They rode again, the storm chasing them across the moors. Hours blurred into one another. By evening their horses were foaming, but the lights of York glimmered on the horizon. In the crowded post office, Alexander slammed a coin on the counter. We're here for a letter sent from Blackthorn Hall, he said, addressed to the magistrate. The clerk blinked. Too late, my lord. It's already been sent on to the courthouse. Where? Across the square. Alexander turned to Eliza. Stay here. No, she said. We finish this together. They crossed the rain-soaked square, their boots splashing through puddles. Inside the courthouse, a clerk sat behind a desk piled with letters. Alexander spoke quickly. There's a document among them, a private matter, falsely delivered. It bears my seal. The clerk frowned. I can't release official correspondence without... Eliza stepped forward. Please, it's a matter of honor. A woman's name is at stake. The clerk hesitated, then searched through the stack. Here, he said, holding up a sealed envelope. Arrived just an hour ago. Alexander took it, broke the seal, and exhaled. We're in time. Eliza's knees nearly gave out from relief. Then it's done. But as they turned to leave, a voice came from behind them. You shouldn't have come. They both froze. Catherine stood in the doorway, drenched and breathless, her eyes wild with exhaustion. Alexander stepped forward. You followed us. I never stopped, she said. I couldn't. I needed to see how far you'd go for her. Eliza's heart ached. You didn't have to do this. I did, Catherine said, because if I couldn't have your love, Alexander, at least I could have your truth. You already have it, he said. You always did. Her expression softened just for a moment. Then why does it still hurt? Eliza reached for her, but Catherine stepped back. Keep it, she said, nodding toward the letter. Burn it if you must. But the world will learn the truth anyway. Secrets can't live forever. Rain streamed from her cloak as she turned and walked into the square. Catherine, Alexander called after her, but she didn't look back. They followed her out into the storm. At the edge of the street, a carriage waited, its driver already aboard. Catherine climbed inside and closed the door. The horses lurched forward, wheels splashing through the mud. Eliza and Alexander stood watching until the carriage vanished into the rain. Alexander's voice was rough. "She'll never forgive us." "Perhaps forgiveness isn't what she needs," Eliza said quietly. "Maybe she just needs freedom." He turned to her, the rain running down his face. "And what do you need?" Eliza looked toward the road, where the carriage lights had disappeared. "To start over." He took her hand gently. "Then we will." She managed a small smile. "Together? Always." The bell of the courthouse struck noon, echoing across the square. Thunder rolled one last time and then faded, leaving only the sound of rain. They stood there, hand in hand, as if the world around them had gone still. And then, from the shadows of an alley across the street, a cloaked figure stepped forward, watching them with cold eyes. In his gloved hand, he held the second copy of Catherine's letter. The rain didn't stop until morning. By then, the streets of York were quiet. The storm washed into silence. Alexander and Eliza stood in the small inn where they'd taken shelter, the air thick with the scent of damp wood and smoke. Eliza sat near the fire, her eyes fixed on the flames. "She won't come back," she said softly. "Catherine's gone for good." Alexander poured 2 cups of tea, his movements slow, deliberate. "She deserves peace," he said. "For the first time, perhaps she'll find it." Eliza looked up. "And us?" He met her gaze. "We'll return to Blackthorn. What happens next must be faced there." The journey home was long and silent. The countryside still glistened from the storm, fields heavy with mist. When they reached the gates of Blackthorn Hall, the servants gathered, whispering among themselves. Mrs. Harker stepped forward, her face drawn but steady. "My lord," she said, "we feared you lost." "Not lost," Alexander replied. "Only delayed." Her eyes shifted to Eliza. "And Lady Catherine?" "She's safe," Eliza said quietly. "She won't be returning." Mrs. Harker's lips pressed together, but she said nothing more. She gestured to the waiting servants. "The house has been prepared for your return, my lord." Inside, the hall felt changed. The silence no longer pressed so heavily. The portraits no longer seemed to watch. The storm had washed something away, though neither of them knew what. That evening, Alexander found Eliza in the conservatory, standing before the same window where she had first met Catherine. The sky beyond was turning gold with sunset. "Do you ever wonder," he asked softly, "if peace is only another kind of silence?" Eliza turned to him. "Peace is what's left when the noise has burned itself out." He smiled faintly. "You sound like my mother." She tilted her head. "You've said that before. It's still true." He took her hand, but gently, almost with hesitation. "The world may never accept what we've done," he said, "but I no longer care. I've lived too long by duty." "You kept your promises," she said. "Perhaps," he replied, "but some promises are prisons." Eliza looked out the window again. "Then let's make no more of them." "Agreed," he said. "Only truth between us." Days passed in uneasy calm. The letter Catherine had sent never reached the magistrate. Alexander had destroyed it in the courthouse fire that burned the previous night. Word spread slowly through the countryside that the Duke of Westmore's engagement was dissolved, the lady gone abroad for her health. No one spoke of Eliza's lineage. The Duke's word was enough, but not everyone believed it. One afternoon, Mrs. Harker entered the study, her expression grim. "A man came to the gate, my lord," she said. "Said he was from London. He asked for Miss Eliza by name." Alexander's shoulders tensed. "What did you tell him?" "That she wasn't here, but he left this." She handed him an envelope sealed with black wax. Eliza's heart skipped. "Another letter." He broke the seal. Inside was a single page, neatly written. "The truth can't be buried twice." No signature. Alexander crumpled it and threw it into the fire. "Let them dig," he said. "There's nothing left to find." Mrs. Harker hesitated. "Begging your pardon, my lord, but secrets don't die easily in this house." He turned sharply. "That's enough, Harker." She bowed her head and withdrew. Eliza watched the letter curl and blacken in the fire. "Do you think Catherine sent it?" He shook his head. "No. This hand was colder. It's someone who wants what she couldn't have." "Power." Eliza said nothing. The flames crackled softly, consuming the last of the ink. Weeks passed. Slowly, the house began to breathe again. Servants laughed in the kitchens, the stables filled with sound, and the moors bloomed once more. Eliza found herself in the gardens often, pruning roses or reading by the fountain. For the first time, she belonged somewhere, not as a servant, not as an heiress, simply as herself. One afternoon, Mrs. Harker approached her quietly. "The doctor says His Grace's shoulder is nearly healed," she said. "He's been asking for you." Eliza smiled. "I'll come." She found Alexander in the music room, the windows open to the breeze. He was seated at the piano, his fingers moving gently over the keys, though no melody came. "You play," she said. "Badly," he replied. "My mother tried to teach me once. She said every note was a prayer." "And did you believe her?" "I do now." He looked up at her, a hint of warmth in his eyes. "You've changed this place, Eliza. It doesn't feel cursed anymore." She shook her head. "I didn't change it. I only stopped running from it." He stood slowly, crossing the room until they were face to face. "You remind me that not everything broken needs mending. Some things are meant to stay cracked, to let the light in." Eliza blushed. "You speak as if you found peace." "Perhaps I have." They fell into silence, the kind that felt full instead of empty. That evening, a messenger arrived from London. Alexander opened the letter at once, his face unreadable. "What is it?" Eliza asked. "Catherine," he said quietly. "She's in France. Her uncle sent word. She's entered a convent near Calais." Eliza's throat tightened. "Then she's safe." "She's safe," he repeated. "And free." She touched his hand. "That's all she ever wanted." He nodded. "And perhaps all we should want too." In the days that followed, Alexander began to restore the West Wing. The crypt was sealed once more, the portraits cleaned, the broken windows mended. He wanted to erase the years of silence. But he left one thing untouched, the painting of the Duchess. One night Eliza found him there, standing before it. "She looks like you," he said softly. "She looks like Catherine too," Eliza replied. He smiled. "Then perhaps she's finally at peace as well." The room fell quiet except for the distant sound of the clock. Eliza said, "Do you ever regret it, destroying the letter?" He shook his head. "Truth can be many things, Eliza. Sometimes mercy is one of them." Her eyes filled with tears she didn't try to hide. "And what are we now? Who are we without the lies?" He reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek. "We're what's left when the lies are gone." The firelight danced between them, soft and warm. Mrs. Harker's footsteps broke the moment. She entered, holding a small parcel. "This just arrived from the village, my lord." Alexander took it, unwrapping the cloth carefully. Inside was a silver locket, old, tarnished, its hinges worn. Eliza's breath caught. "That was my mother's." "Where did it come from?" Alexander asked. "The messenger said it was found near the Holloway crypt when the men sealed it," Mrs. Harker replied. Eliza took it in trembling hands and opened it. Inside was a faded miniature of a young woman, Mary Holloway, and beside it a lock of hair tied with a blue ribbon. She looked up at Alexander. She kept this all her life. She loved him, even after everything. He nodded slowly. "Love survives what pride can't." Mrs. Harker lingered at the door. "The past is at rest now," she said. "Let it stay buried." When she was gone, Eliza closed the locket and pressed it to her chest. "Then it's truly over." Alexander smiled faintly. "Not over. Changed." The following morning, the first snow of the season dusted the hills. The air was crisp, the sky pale blue. The servants decorated the great hall for winter. Laughter echoed again through the corridors. Eliza stood by the window, watching the white fields beyond. She didn't notice Alexander until his reflection appeared beside hers in the glass. "It's beautiful," she said. "It's home," he replied. She turned to face him. "Do you ever think we were meant to find each other?" "I think we were meant to save each other," he said. She smiled. "Then we've done our duty." He reached for her hand. "It doesn't feel like duty anymore." They stood together in silence, the light from the fire painting their faces in gold and red. As the day faded into evening, the bells from the nearby village church drifted faintly through the air. A wedding, perhaps, or a celebration. Eliza closed her eyes and listened. When she opened them again, Alexander was watching her. "What is it?" he asked. "Nothing," she said softly. "Only peace." He smiled. "Then keep it, Eliza. Keep it as long as you can. She looked up at him, her heart steady now, her fear gone. And you? He leaned closer. I'll keep you. Outside, the snow continued to fall, quiet and steady. Neither of them noticed the man on horseback waiting at the edge of the woods, a sealed document tucked inside his coat. It bore the crest of the crown, and the Duke of Westmore's name written across the top. The messenger on horseback dismounted slowly, snow falling against his shoulders. He knocked at the great oak doors of Blackthorn Hall, his breath forming white clouds in the cold morning air. Mrs. Harker answered, her eyes narrowing. What business brings you here? Official delivery, the man said, handing her the sealed document. For the Duke of Westmore, immediate attention. Mrs. Harker took it, thanked him curtly, and shut the door. The wax seal bore the mark of the crown. She hesitated only a moment before carrying it to the study, where Alexander and Eliza sat together by the fire. My lord, she said softly, a letter from London. Alexander took it, broke the seal, and read. His expression changed, surprise, disbelief, then something close to wonder. What is it? Eliza asked. He looked up at her, eyes bright. It's over. The inquiry has been dismissed. The Crown has accepted my resignation from the title of Duke. Eliza frowned. Resignation? I asked for it, he said. I no longer want to live under a name that brought so much pain. I've been released from all obligations. Blackthorn remains mine, but I'm free. Mrs. Harker blinked. Free? You mean no more duties, no more counsels, no more debt to anyone but myself? He smiled faintly. And to her, Eliza's breath caught. Alexander. He folded the letter carefully. They've granted my request to renounce the title. From this day forward, there is no Duke of Westmore. Only a man who wishes to start anew. Mrs. Harker's eyes softened. Then perhaps the house will finally rest. When she left, Eliza rose and went to the window. Snow still drifted lightly outside, each flake shimmering in the pale sunlight. You gave up everything, she whispered. I gave up nothing I wanted to keep, he said. I have enough, and I have you. She turned to him, her voice unsteady. And if the world asks who I am? Then I'll tell them the truth, he said, that you're Eliza Holloway, the woman who saved my life and my soul. Her lips trembled. You mean that? With everything I am. He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. Marry me, Eliza. Not for title or duty. Marry me because I can't imagine waking another day without you. Her answer came without hesitation. Yes. He exhaled as if he'd been holding his breath for years. Then let's have no delay. I won't risk losing you to another storm. She smiled through her tears. I think we've survived enough of those. They were married quietly 2 days later in the small stone chapel on the edge of the estate. The snow was still falling, soft and steady, covering the moors in white. Only a few witnesses stood by, Mrs. Harker, Clara, and the village priest, who had known Alexander since childhood. Eliza wore a simple gown of ivory muslin, her hair loosely pinned, a single white rose at her shoulder. Alexander, no longer dressed as a duke, wore a dark coat and plain gloves. When he took her hand, his eyes were steady and warm. Do you, Alexander, take this woman? The priest began, but the words faded into the stillness of the morning. When it was done, he kissed her gently, reverently, and the bells from the village carried through the air, bright against the winter sky. Mrs. Harker wiped her eyes discreetly. A good match, she murmured. Perhaps the first honest one this house has seen in a century. Afterward, Alexander led Eliza out into the courtyard, where snowflakes caught in her hair like tiny stars. Do you realize, he said softly, that this is the first time I've felt at home? Eliza laughed lightly. You've always been home. You just didn't know it. He touched her cheek. And you've always been the storm I needed. They spent that afternoon walking through the quiet rooms of the house, now warm with firelight. The servants smiled as they passed. In the library, Eliza paused by the piano, running her fingers along the keys. Play something, Alexander said. I can't, she replied with a shy laugh. I've never learned. Then we'll learn together. He sat beside her and pressed a single note. The sound echoed softly through the room. See? Not so frightening. She played another, and he joined her. Soon the air was filled with hesitant, uneven music, two hearts finding rhythm in the quiet. When evening came, Mrs. Harker arranged a small supper for them, bread, roasted game, and a bottle of the Duke's old wine. "To your new life," she said, lifting a glass. Alexander smiled. "And to yours. You've carried this house longer than anyone. You deserve rest as much as we do." Mrs. Harker's eyes glistened. "Then I'll rest, knowing it's finally in good hands." Later, when the house had gone still, Eliza stood at the window of their chamber, watching the snow fall over the frozen lake. The candlelight flickered across the walls, soft and golden. Alexander came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You're quiet," he murmured. "I was thinking of Catherine," she said. "Do you think she's happy?" "I think she's free," he said. "And that's enough." Eliza turned to face him. "Then we're all free now." He nodded. "Yes." He leaned down, his forehead against hers. "I used to believe love was something earned through sacrifice. Now I know it's the only thing that asks for nothing." Eliza smiled. "It asks for honesty." He kissed her, softly at first, then with the certainty of a man who had found what he'd been searching for all his life. Outside, the snow fell harder, cloaking the world in white. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows, glinting off the frost. The bells from the chapel rang again, this time for joy. The villagers came to the gates with baskets of flowers and warm bread, cheering when Alexander and Eliza appeared on the steps. He greeted them all with laughter, his arm around her shoulders. "Blackthorn belongs to everyone now," he said. "Its doors will never be closed again." That evening, a feast was held in the great hall. The long tables were covered in candles and food, and the air filled with laughter and music. For the first time in memory, Blackthorn Hall was alive. Clara danced with one of the stable boys near the hearth. Mrs. Harker watched from a chair by the fire, smiling faintly. Eliza and Alexander stood at the center of it all, hand in hand. "Do you hear that?" he asked. "Hear what?" "The sound of this house breathing again." She laughed. "It sounds like happiness." They danced together slowly, as the music swelled around them. The fire crackled, and snow drifted against the windows. When the last candle burned low, they slipped outside. The moon hung bright above the frozen fields. "Tell me something true," Eliza said, her breath clouding in the cold. Alexander smiled. "I'm not afraid anymore." "Of what?" "Of losing what I love." Eliza touched his face. "Then keep it close." "I intend to." He took her hand and placed it over his heart. "You see, it's already yours." The wind swept through the courtyard, carrying the scent of pine and snow. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll ride to the coast. We'll see the sea together as we promised." She looked up at him. "And after that?" "After that," he said, "whatever life we choose." They stood in silence, the stars bright above them. The house behind them glowed with warmth, its long shadow stretching across the snow. Eliza leaned into him. "Do you think love can begin again, even after all that's been broken?" He smiled. "It's the only thing that ever truly begins." The chapel bells rang once more, faint in the distance, and the light of dawn touched the horizon. Inside, the fire in the great hall burned high, casting golden light across the portraits on the walls. The Duchess's painted smile seemed softer now, her eyes less sorrowful, as if the house itself had finally forgiven its own ghosts. In the garden, the first crocuses pushed through the snow, fragile but certain, reaching toward the sun. Eliza turned her face to the warmth, her fingers intertwined with Alexander's. "This is our home," she whispered. "And always will be," he said. Their hands tightened together as the morning light spread over the moors, golden and new. The bells from the village rang one last time, echoing across the hills, bright and clear, like the sound of something reborn. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.